Hello friends, it's Miss Mowers here. I am here to give you a quick lesson on the difference between simplifying fractions and finding equivalent fractions. Now this is what gives fourth graders a lot of trouble. There are a couple things that we have to remember here. First and most important is that whatever we do to the top, we must do to the bottom. So you'll hear me say that a lot during this video, and I hope that you remember to do that in any of this fraction work that you're doing. First things first, simplifying. When we simplify, we use factor trees. So factor trees look like this. If you recall, they have your factor, and then your product on top. When you simplify, you usually have two of these. You have one for the numerator and one for the denominator. When we use equivalent fractions usually have us use multiples. So multiples is our skip counting, like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, or if we did our multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, so on and so forth, all the way down. Okay, so factor trees help us simplify a fraction. For example, if I gave the fraction 24/36, the way I solve that is by creating two factor trees. I create a factor tree for 24. 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. So 3 times 8, 4 times 6. Okay, and then I can't multiply 5 by anything, and 6 I start moving my way back up. I also make one for the number 36. So 1 and 36, I know that 2 and, is it 2 and 13? 2 and 18, sorry about that. 2 and 18, 3 and, that's 10, 11, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, ooh, there's a lot for 36, 6 and 6. When I make my factor trees, I can find the number that they have in common to divide my numerator and my denominator by. So this is called our greatest common factor, or sometimes we call it our GCF. We find our greatest common factor, which in this case just so happens to be 12. So that means I can divide my numerator by 12 and my denominator by 12. So 24 divided by 12, I use my factor tree, it gives me 2. 36 divided by 12, if I use my factor tree, I get a denominator of 3. So I know 24/6 simplifies to 2/3. So factor trees and your greatest common factor help you simplify a fraction. When we are finding equivalent fractions, we have to find our multiples, or use our multiples rather. So if I were to be given a problem like 6/8 and then 3/5, and we have to determine if these are equivalent. We don't know if they are equal. The first thing that we do is we list our multiples. 8, multiples of our denominators. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80. We will also list our multiples of 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Now, in simplifying, we look for the greatest common factor. In finding equivalent fractions, we look for the least common, I'm running out of room, least common multiple, or what we know as our LCM. We want the smallest number possible, so we're not dealing with giant fractions. So which one do they have in common that is the smallest? 8 and 5, none of these are in common until I get to 40. There's 40 here and 40 here. There's not 32 on this side, or 24, or 16, or 8. So 40 is what they have in common. So that means I can create new fractions with a denominator of 40, or equivalent fractions, not new fractions, equivalent fractions with a denominator of 40. And I have to ask myself, how did I get 8 to 40? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I multiplied by 5. So whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. So 6 times 5 gives me 30. Now, how do I get 5 to 40? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I multiplied by 8. So whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. 3 times 8 is 24. So now when I look at these problems, I can compare 30 40ths is greater than 24 40ths. So I know that they are not equal. So I found that out using my multiples. My multiples helped me find a denominator that they had in common so that I could compare the numerators. When I'm simplifying, I need to find what I can divide the numerator and the denominator by, and I do that by finding or using factor trees. So multiples and factor trees, they both deal with multiplication. This one we're trying to see what we can divide by. This one we're trying to see what we can multiply by to get them with the same denominator. Okay, so please let Ms. Kent or I know if you have any questions, and I hope this video was helpful.